Okay, this is Mr. H again. I'm going to do question number 18 from the January 2023 Regents exam. And then I'm going to upload this. Now, this question here is a question that my students almost always struggle with. And not just my student, but I think a lot of students, because you're just dealing with a bunch of variables and we're trying to get we got Q by itself, but we want to get T of F by itself. So you got to do some algebraic manipulation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the calculator, because you can use the calculator to solve this. It's a little bit of work, but it's things that you guys know how to do. So I'm going to show you how to do it. And then I'm going to show you how to do it algebraically. So I'm going to create two videos for this. One to use the calculator, one to do it algebraically. I'm going to start with the calculator version. All right. So first thing, let me read the question. So let's see here. Council, I'm trying to get my stopwatch here. Okay, now, so in this case, it says the amount of energy Q is represented by the letter Q, and joules needed to raise the temperature of m grams of substance is given by the formula Q equals m times C times the quantity T sub F minus T sub I. Now, where C is the specific heat capacity of the substance, and it says if the initial temperature represented by T sub I, if its initial temperature is T sub I, an equation to find its final temperature, T sub F is. Now, that's a lot, but basically all they're saying is we started with this formula, and they want us to get, they want to know, well, what if we want to get T of F by itself, what would we do in order to make that happen? That's all they're asking. It's kind of a lot of words to say. All we want to do is we want to get T of F by itself. Now, here's what we're going to do, and this is what I want you to see. Now, every time, especially in the multiple choice section, when you look at the answer choices and you have a bunch of variables, almost always you can store. And you can in this case too, and I'm just going to show you how to do that. It's a little bit more involved than a normal storing, but it's still doable. So for each, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to store a number for every variable on the right-hand side of the equation. And then once I get those variables stored, I'm going to solve for the Q. And then that's going to make this equation kind of in balance. It's going to be a true statement. And then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to look for, out of the answer choices, which one is a true statement. So let me just show you what I mean. So every variable, M, C, T sub F, T sub I, I'm going to store a number. And these are the numbers I'm going to store. I'm going to put 2 in here, put 3 in here, store 4 in here, and store 5 in here. I'm just going to use those numbers. Doesn't matter what numbers they are, but I'm just keeping it simple. Now, so let me go to the calculator and get that started. So if I go to the calculator, so I want this. I'm going to go to the calculate screen and I'm just going to start storing numbers. So 2 control store into M. That's done. And then I'm going to do 3 control store into C. That's done. And I'm doing 4 control store into, watch this. I'm going to create a variable for T sub F. So I'm going to use these two letters together. So that represents the T sub F, right? And you can create your own variables by just putting 2 letters together. So that's the T sub F. And then I'm going to take 5 and I'm going to store that into T sub I. So it's going to be TI. Boom. And then I press enter. Now, so I've stored all those numbers. Now I want to solve using those numbers for the amount of energy or the Q value. So I'm going to use insolve. So menu, and then I'm going to go numerical solve, and then I'm just going to key in the original equation. So it's going to be Q, which is here, equals N. Now I've got to put multiplication symbols between these letters. Otherwise, the calculator is going to think that it's a variable that I created, and I don't want it to do that. And then I'm going to use parentheses, And then I'm going to do T sub F. So it's going to be TF. And then it's going to be minus TI. TI. And then let's see. Now, which variable am I solving for? Well, if you look at this, you will notice that every variable on the right is bolded, which means I put a number in there, which I did, and the only one that's not bolded is the Q. So that's actually what I'm solving for. So I just do comma, and then I do Q. And then I press enter. So it tells me that the value, so I'm going to go back over here because I want you guys to see this. It tells me that I calculated the value, and I'm going to make this a different color because I calculated it's going to be a -6. So now when I use this, if I enter this equation with all of those numbers stored, it's going to give me a true statement. So I got to do one more thing before we do this. So now that I know that Q is a -6, I'm going to store a -6 into Q. Boom. I put that into Q and it's done. All right. So now if I key in the original equation, let's say I'm going to show you this. This is going to be Q equals M times C times the T sub F, TF, where are you, F? TF minus TI. And then if I press enter, I get a true statement. And I know it's going to be true because I calculated it and I made it a true statement. Now, the reason that that's important is all you're going to do, if you've done algebra right, any equation that you get out of this should be a true statement. So all I got to do is go through and look at the answer choices. So the very first one I'm going to start with is going to be TF. So let's make sure you guys get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter each one of these equations and I'm going to see which one gives me a true statement. The one that gives me a true statement is the answer. If it gives me a false, that means that they've made a mistake and that's not what we want. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to enter each one of those. So let me clear the screen a little bit. So I'm going to do menu 15 and then I'm just going to start. So this is going to be TF. TF equals, and then it's going to be divided by Q over M times C. So this will be M times C. And by the way, you've got to put those multiplications between those variables. Otherwise, your calculator is going to give you an error message. And then this is going to be TI. Now, when I press this, I got a false. So that's not the answer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this. And I'm just going to change the minus to a plus. And then I'm going to test it again. So I'm going to make this a plus. Oops, not that. I want to make it a plus. And then I press enter. Now I got a true statement. That's the answer. So choice number 2, if I go back to this, is the answer. This would be the answer. I got a true statement for this one. I got a false for this one. If you want to, you could try these other ones. You should get falses. You're looking for truths. So I found it. Now, so let me go back over this. So whenever you are given something like this with a bunch of variables, you just have to store numbers for each variable, and then you're going to calculate the right or the left-hand side or the variable that's already by itself, calculate that. And when you do that, that's going to make a true statement. And then you're just going through each answer choice, trying to find the one that's true. So let me stop this and get this loaded. Stop.